Hey guys, so there are a lot of theories about the connections between One Piece and Norse mythology, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the connections between runes and One Piece. And runes are basically the scripts that Vikings used. So we know that One Piece was inspired by Wiki the Viking, which is a show about Vikings, so it kind of fits, right? But you will not find runes in the art style, so that's why I think a lot of people gave up this thought. But believe me, the connections are quite amazing. So we're going to talk about the Wheel of D, Love Tale, and Binks Sake, as well as other minor themes. If you ever wanted to decipher poneglyphs, we will do something similar, but not with poneglyphs. So let's start with explanation about what runes actually are.
The word rune is translated into English as a secret. And Vikings wrote runes on their weapons, houses. They used them to protect their own life, their family, and in their everyday life. So here we have a lot of meanings for runes. First of all, it's historical meaning from ancient texts. Then it's mythological meaning from the Norse mythology, and of course there is mystical and magical meaning that was used by ancient shamans for their rituals.
So yeah, that should basically explain why we will be talking about so many meanings for every rune. And let's just start. We're going to start with Love Tale. Let's just remember what we know about it. We know it's a place where Roger and his crew loved for unknown reasons, and we also know that the knowledge of the Void Century and knowledge about the world is contained there in some way. So not really a lot we know, and those concepts kind of don't connect with each other perfectly in any way, but well, that is until you get into runes.
And here we come to our first rune, and it's rune Perto. Please now read it carefully. So this was Anglo-Saxon rune poem, and based on it, researchers define three meanings of this rune: a game, a secret, and alcohol. But there is one more meaning in German tradition. It's a fruit tree and alcohol too. But don't forget about shamanic tradition, because it's a very important part of in the history of runes. And its meaning is the knowledge of everything, which you gain by discovering the secrets of the runes.
Yeah, so this is an example how one single rune can connect a lot of concepts we know about a particular thing in One Piece, like Love Tale, for example, a place of laughter where warriors sit and, well, relax after the battles, a fruit tree, and the whole knowledge of the world. And in some sources, the whole knowledge is described as a stone.
Perto is also the rune that contains the meaning of fate, and it's a huge topic that we are not getting into today.
But fate is a huge topic in One Piece as well, so we will just say here that fate for people and the world does exist, but it can and should be changed, especially if you're someone with a letter D in your name.
Even though the gas translates into modern languages as day, the meaning it holds is a bit different. So, the gas is dawn. Not only is it dawn, it is not the kind of dawn that comes every day. This is a new beginning that is based on the previous achievements, including mistakes. This rune is the energy of a dawn which doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes after a very long night, a period which is used to build up potential. It's believed that the way it's written symbolizes the transition between day and night, It is the rune that means sudden and groundbreaking changes, but for the better.
Now, as we know, the letter D is used in One Piece to describe people, so just historic meanings of objects and events will not be enough here, so let's just look into what this rune actually means for a person. So basically there are things that they should do to achieve success and live to their full potential. And those things are very simple. They are: always rely on their intuition and never stop. They should never listen to other people, common sense or logic. They should never even for a moment think that something is impossible, no matter how hard it is. If they don't have any fear or doubts, the fact that they will achieve success is unquestionable. The whole world will change in a way that ensures their success. So yeah, basically it explains plot armor. The worst thing you can do as a D is wait. You have to act immediately, otherwise you will lose the chance completely and you will fail as a D. And based on this explanation, I think everybody already knows who this person who never stops, always listens to his intuition only, and has no fear or doubts is. Actually, there might be two, but we don't really know a lot about Roger's decision-making process to tell for sure. Just a side note. As we know, Roger wanted to name his child Ace or Anne, and from ancient not really runic, but ancient texts, we know that As, like in Asgard, means God, and An means emperor or the supreme ruler. Just something to think about. So now that we have discussed that, let's talk about the Ancient Kingdom. So if Ancient Kingdom is connected to the clan of D, that means that the Ancient Kingdom is pro-changes, right? So their allies are probably pro-changes as well. Let's try and prove that. Now, let's talk about Wano. In Wano, the big thing in symbols is the crescent moon. And the crescent moon in Gypsy runes symbolizes changes, but changes are kind of gradual. Now, let's remember Fishman Island. Now, in Fishman Island, you can't really find any runes, but we want to talk about tattoo. Let's look at Neptune's arm. Now here we can see obviously the symbol for waves, but also this thing. That is the symbol for changes, but changes more sudden. And yes, something like the destruction of the Fishman Island could be considered sudden changes. Let's just go back to the gods, because there are some things which we have not discussed yet. Like, for example, why is the clan of D the enemy of the celestial dragons? And to answer that question, we actually need to look at the symbol of the celestial dragons. Now, that is basically a dragon's footprint, right? And there is no rune left.
Yeah, actually there is no rune that means the dragon footprint, but there is a rune that means a raven footprint. This rune is strongly associated with guards and their heavenly protection. This rune can describe the feeling that you can have when you look at something ineffable. But the most commonly accepted meaning of this rune is protection.
Now, if we assume that the original 21 kings were not such scumbags as the recent celestial dragons, they were trying to protect the world from the clone of D, from the people who are going to bring drastic changes to the world.
And if we look at the theological meaning of this rune Tagas, we can see that it means the Great War.
No, not that one, but that one.
And this is Great War, Ragnarok, that will destroy all worlds, including gods, to build everything up from scratch.
Yeah, so probably that is something you will try to avoid, unless you're crazy or a member of the clan of D or something. So let's hope that after everything is destroyed, it will be good. I mean, who likes people anyway? Now that we have talked about almost everything, it is indeed the time to talk about revolutionaries. So, if you have ever wondered why Dragon saved Luffy at Lockdown, it is literally written on his face. This is the rune Atal, which means father. Now, you can look at Dragon's tattoo and this rune and say, well, they're not really similar, what are you talking about? What we believe it to be is something that we don't know what is called in English because we are bad at research. Anyway, we call it stubs. Those are basically combinations of different runes, and they can be written like this in a straight line, like this in a circle, or just combined. And this particular tattoo, we think, is the combination of these two runes, and each of them can be written in two different ways.
And those runes are Atal, that means experience accumulated by previous generation, inherited by their children. Gebo, which is the flow of time, or Ingis, which means genetic memory or the memory of blood, which is passed from generation to generation.
And that is indeed the inherited will and the flow of time that he talks about so much. Now, about the dreams, we don't know exactly because there is no rune that corresponds directly to dreams, at least in, Russian. But there are a lot of dreams which mean something like desire or ambition, so to find that out we actually need to get into the Japanese text. And the last rune we're going to discuss here is Gebo, and well, yes, it's just a cross. I really didn't want to do that, but there is one meaning that really caught my attention.
One of the meanings for this rune, Gebo, is cooperation or friendship. Basically, any kind of bonds that connect people. This rune connects different people or forces and helps them to achieve their common goal. But it also says that the strongest kind of unity or a team can be found only when each member of this team has its own personal goal.
And that is basically the definition of Strawhats. And the only two people in Strawhats who seem to have this rune on them are Luffy and Chopper. So basically the people who expressed their desire to have friends before joining. And in Alabaster as well, they used this kind of cross shape to show their friendship. So, maybe. This is all that we're going to say about runes for now, and let's get into the interesting parts. So, we're arguing that Binks Sake is indeed a rune poem, and to prove that, you should first know what rune poem actually is.
The main purpose of the rune poem is to preserve knowledge. Of course, petroglyphs is cool and stuff, but you cannot take it with you to sea. Like poneglyphs, your enemy can destroy it. So the best way to preserve information that is necessary for your tradition, for your culture, is through the spoken words. And the best way to remember the spoken words is to sing it.
If we assume that the Binks sake is actually the song that is used to preserve knowledge, we should look into the same things that are used to preserve knowledge. This was not the train of thought that we originally had. We just kind of wanted to learn more about runes, and that's why we obviously found out about the rune poems. And the thing about the rune poems is that they make no sense unless you know it is a rune poem. Now, Binks sake also doesn't really make a lot of sense. The thing is, the way they make no sense is kind of similar. Now we will talk about the Anglo-Saxon rune poem, which basically has 29 runes in there, while Binks sake only has 22 lines, so it cannot be true. But if we take poetic translation, for example, each verse corresponds to a rune, and in this case, if Binks sake actually has any connection to a rune whatsoever, it will leave us with a word consisting of 6 letters, or a message consisting of 6 runes. Now, wouldn't that be great if it just was Joy Boy or the name of the ancient kingdom? That's exactly what I thought when I went into that. So yeah, this is what we came up with. And basically we have already discussed that the gods kind of closes the cycle of the world, and here this cycle starts with sun, which comes after dawn, which is very logical. Now we have already said that the last 2 verses are kind of separate from the first 4, so let's look there. And here we have the symbol for joy and the symbol for man. So the closest thing to a joy boy that you can basically have in runes. This is going really good so far. Now let's look at this 4. This one we have already discussed and kind of think that it is connected to Love-Tale in some way. This one means road, and this one is the will to fight and the desire for victory. Also overcoming hardships, something like that. Yeah, so what we have here is basically the sun goes to One Piece, overcomes hardships, and joy. Doesn't really make sense. That is until you remember that most ancient texts were in fact riddles, and the most common thing that you can find there is when the answer is read backwards. So if we read this backwards, we will get Joy Boy, who overcomes hardships and basically goes to the victory, obtains the One Piece, and guides the sun. That's like perfect, right? For a prophecy that is contained within a song that is passed down through generations, and not everybody can understand that. And we should be happy about that. Really, really great. But let's be honest here, this is complete. Well, not because we have just made this up. It is honestly what we came up with after comparing the texts. But let's just talk about our methodology. Now, what we are doing here is we are taking the ancient text which was translated into modern English, Russian, and Japanese. And we take the Japanese text because, well, it is the most important one, and translate it into English because we cannot understand that. And then we take the Binks sake and take the Japanese text, which is Google translated into English, and we also take the official translations, of which there are 3, and of course the Russian translation, because why not? And we take all of that and just cross-reference that. That is not a good way to do research. And this brings us to the true purpose of this video, because let's be honest here, guys, if you stayed with us for this long, you are into it. And we need a person who actually speaks Japanese and understands it really well, and, well, obviously loves One Piece, to kind of check this for us. We will obviously help. It doesn't matter if it's going to be our video or you want to shoot and make your own video. We just want to know if this is something that can be proven or disproven in a way. And the reason why we want to help is to basically save you like 3 weeks of research, because, well, we will talk about that later. And also because when you're working with runes, it's very easy to kind of find the first thing on the internet and think it has no connection, and not read like 15 books to find the connections. There are other things which we would like this person to check, because honestly, this theory is really great. Like, if that will spell out the name of the ancient kingdom, that would be just mind-blowing. But probably will not. You know, we are talking here about the thing that the inspiration for some of the concepts in One Piece may come from runes. We are not arguing that the people in One Piece actually know these exact runes that were used in our world. Anyway, I probably do not completely believe that all of this corresponds to actual runes. Like, knowing Oda, he probably would have come up with his own runes or something like that. But what we want you to look into is another, not meaning, but another thing connected to the rune poem. Basically, guys, the rune poem is not the poem which is like rune and its meaning. It is not like that. A lot of researchers agree that originally the runes themselves were not a part of the rune poem. The rune poem is basically a collection of riddles, and those riddles were written in this form to test the understanding of the person reading it. What we are saying is Binks sake may be just that, the collection of riddles. And there are things that you need to look out for when reading the Japanese text. And those things are, first of all, the words that can be read backwards. Second, the words that sound the same but can be written differently. In this case, in the poem, you will find the wrong word, but the words that sounds right. And after that, the answer also can be read backwards, obviously. And this is what we need help with, because we cannot do it on our own. Like, we really want to, but learning Japanese takes a lot of time. And you may not believe us about the connections between runes and One Piece or whatever, we're just asking of you to try and approach Binks Sake as a riddle, as a collection of riddles. That will help a lot. Actually, we will be really grateful even if you debunk our theory, because at this point we really need a therapist. Unless you will debunk it, we will not be able to sleep. And yeah, guys, just another side note here, another one. Basically, there are lots of theories that say that this thing, which we can see on the cover story, depicts the ancient weapon Pluton, but I've never heard. I must have missed it because it's really obvious. Like, the symbol for Pluton is literally on the page.